Welcome to the American Diversity Report podcasts. I'm Deborah Levine, your host, the editor-in-chief of the American Diversity Report. And here I interview movers and shakers and diverse change makers. And today's change maker is Susan Popoola. And she is coming to us from England to explain to us about her very valuable work as a human value optimization specialist. She's published several books that explore the world in which we live, reflecting on the opportunities, challenges, evolution, and diversity that we are experiencing. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you very much, Deborah.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about human value optimization, what it is and why we need to know more about it.
I'll start off by telling you where it came from, where it originates with me. Because human value optimization it's based on the central belief, and I would say the truth, that everyone has value. And from when I was small, my mum always told me everyone was important, everyone had a purpose. It doesn't matter what they do, whether it's the person in a big position or whether it's someone doing something which on the face of it may seem small and significant. There's a purpose and there's a value to everyone and what they do. But the key is whether we're talking about the workplace, education, or wider society, is that we need to recognize that value. And to optimize the value of people, it needs to be recognized at two levels. First, individuals need to recognize the value that they have. And secondly, the people around them, whether it, as I said, whatever the environment, also need to appreciate the value that they bring. Take the person that doesn't recognize the value that they bring. I've recently been doing some work with care leavers, young people not brought up by their parents but in the care system. And one of the challenges that they bring is that they don't always recognize their self-worth. And that applies to a lot of other people as well. And the problem with that is if, for instance, they go to the workplace and someone recognizes their capability and tells them to do certain things, their reaction will be to pull back and not necessarily do what they've been asked, not to work to their full potential because they don't believe they're capable. They might act up in certain situations to try and disguise them not thinking that they're of value and that they are of worth and have things to offer. So they need to be brought to the place of understanding what they have to offer. The other side of that is other people need to recognize what people bring as well. If I go into a work environment, I recognize what I bring, I recognize my capabilities, but the people around me don't believe I'm much good. I'll put myself forward and say I can do things, but they'll hold me back. And then I'll be limited in what I can achieve. So human value optimization comes where we have the understanding, the systems, the purpose, the processes, and all the things in place that enable people to their value to be seen at its optimal level.
And you have mentioned something called the Mosaic approach to this, yes?
Yes. And the key to the Mosaic, which links to my second book, Consequences Diverse to Mosaic Britain, and I say Britain in many ways, it could be the US or anywhere else in the world, is coming to the place of recognizing our diversity, appreciating, valuing our diversity, but also recognizing the things that we have in common, which ultimately form the core. So that if, for instance, we take the workplace, organizations in an ideal situations, if they're really taking the time to think things through and want to get the right people in place, we'll start off by identifying their values, their purpose, their ethos, and their overall brand, so that they attract people that have those things in common with them, in addition to skills, competencies, attitude. And those people will come from diverse backgrounds with value that they bring from the backgrounds that they've come from, with their differences, whichever way we look at differences, whether it's social, economical, whether it's based on gender, color, sexual orientation, or what have you. And often we talk about diversity, we bring people from diverse backgrounds in, but we don't recognize what they have in common with everyone else as well. So the Mosaic approach comes about when we first recognize the things that people have in common, which form a baseline. And that's like the glue on a mosaic art piece of artwork. But on top of that, we recognize the differences, the different things that people bring, which enable a richness and the power of diversity to come to force. And that's what the Mosaic approach is all about.
It sounds like this is something you are extremely passionate about. I gather that this is a lot of your life story embedded in there, correct?
It is, yes. I'm fortunate, I would say, to have, should I say, lived in different places with different people. When I was small, I was actually private fostered, and I lived with a white working class family in that environment. I learned a lot of the positives from there. I saw the challenges as well. Later on, my parents are Nigerian. I lived with them in Nigeria. A much more affluent environment, which might be seen as a contradiction since Nigeria is a developing country. But at the same time, as with everywhere, there's rich and poor. And I also learnt from that environment. And so two distinctly different environments, and I saw the differences, I saw the similarities. I was able to take what I saw as the best of both, to be able to see the commonalities of humanity and the key things that are key to people, and take that forward. Through the years going on from there, coming back to England, I've been able to travel to different places, different parts of the States, Japan, other parts of Asia, different parts of Europe, different places in the world. I still have a lot of places to go to. But one thing that my background has enabled me to do is to find ways to relate to different people. I truly believe that if you take the time, you can find something in common with anyone and everyone, while also appreciating the differences and learning from those things.
I would definitely agree, having traveled a bit myself. And one of the things that comes up for people like us who are people-oriented is technology and how it is changing our relationships. Talk a little bit about this. I see that you are looking at this very closely.
Well, one of the things I've noticed with technology, there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence and how it's going to change the world and how it's going to change the way we work and how we do things. And I don't think we've really started, we haven't got as far as we think with this yet. We've just touched the surface. But one of the things that I've noticed is that we need, just as we talk about the importance of diversity in the workplace and how it's key when it comes to things like making business decisions, developing new products, advertising, and we've seen where people get things wrong. With that, there was recently that we know about the advertise with the skin products where people from diverse backgrounds are misrepresented. There was recently a case with Gap where there was a black child who had the top which called him with a cheeky referred to him as a cheeky monkey, and someone could innocently say that if they don't understand the historical context. And this is important as we begin to develop artificial intelligence and new ideas with technology, because key with what we're developing is the foundation, what we put, how it's built to recognize people from diverse backgrounds. If we just have people from one background developing things, they will be limited in their approach and what they put in place. For instance, I'm aware that there are machines that automatically dispense soap, but they only recognize light-colored skinned people. There is also the case of the mapping software that saw black people in photographs and referred to them as gorillas because they were dark-skinned and not recognized by the technology. And so the key is, as we're just beginning to develop new technology, we need to have a broad view in what we're doing. And in order to achieve a broad view, we need to involve people from diverse backgrounds to ensure that is done, because we're starting at the root level at this point in time.
Wow. Thank you. I hadn't even thought about that, and we do need to think about that now rather than when it's already embedded into our technology as a done deal.
Yes.
Goodness. Tell me, you have done quite a bit in educating people, both in the workplace and with young people. What do you see in addition to the technology issues as something that needs to be addressed going forward? We have such a chaotic world that we're living in. How are we preparing our young people, our workplaces, to deal with it? Especially in England, where the chaos is pretty much at the surface.
I think it's with the challenges of Brexit. If you're aware, with Brexit, we had a referendum as to whether we would remain a member of the European Union or not, and decided that we would come out. A small minority, I would say, decided that it would come out of the European Union, and we're currently going through the challenge of trying to work through that. And in the process of doing so, it's brought up a lot of divisions. It's shown where people disagree. It's shown the challenges people face. And I think we've become quite nasty. I think in the States you'll recognize what I'm saying when I say we've become quite nasty. We've become very reactive, insensitive to other people. And I believe we need to do two key things. One is flip that around and try and understand where other people are coming from. It's not always about who's right or wrong, but starting off from why. I grew up as a white child. I've never changed from that white child. So key is, I don't have to agree with you, but let me start off by understanding where you're coming from, why you're doing this. So I think that's one critical thing that we need to do, ultimately, with that, becoming more empathetic towards the other person. And I think the second thing, and I think most especially when we're engaging with young people, is to start off from where they are as opposed to where we believe they should be. Because we have our expectations, but they are who they are. And for whatever reason, they might not think the same way that we do or be at the same place. And it's not productive to stand where you are and shout at a person and tell them what they should be. It's much more productive to go to where they are, to take their hand, to understand their starting position and guide them to where they need to be, but doing so with flexibility to think that we might not be all right, but we can learn from them as well.
Oh, I love it. I think it's wonderful. I've worked with some young people myself, and anytime you start to lecture them about what they should be doing, I could see their eyes glaze over and they are gone someplace else.
Because they're not stupid. They might not always be right, but they know certain things. One of the session that I ran yesterday with my care leavers talk, and I will talk about care leavers quite a lot because I'm quite passionate about that area. But one of the great things with the person that I brought in to co-facilitate is we started off by understanding them, opening up a bit about ourselves so that they knew our own humanity, and letting them lead in terms of what they want, as opposed to what they had expected when they walked through the room, of having people telling them what is right and what's wrong and what they should do.
Thank you. I'm going to keep that in mind the next time I go to teach in a classroom, which will be next week. Thank you. Perfect timing. Is there anything else that you would like to add that we haven't talked about yet?
I believe those are the key things. I think it's just, I would just appeal to people just to take more time to understand the other and their position. Just be a bit more gentle. I find myself these days standing back in horror, listening, trying to digest and understand what's going on.
You have a lot of company in that.
Which is actually positive.
Yes, indeed. And I'd like to, before we end, return to something you started off with, which was lessons from your mother, which sounded very much like the lessons my mother gave me. And wanted to thank your mom. Is there something you'd like to add about her that we should know?
I lost my mum possibly, about 40 years back now.
Oh dear.
I'm 41 to be precise. That's almost telling you how old I am. But she remains probably one of the most important people and the most influential people in my life to today. And I think that's because she did the things that I'm talking about. And I think she was one of those people that saw the positive, helped this world to be a better place. And I hope that I can do the same, and that other people, through me, through others, through their own experiences as well, will do the same thing. And to me, that's the greatest way of honouring her.
Yes, indeed. We pass on the legacy and remind people that can be done and should be done, right?
Yep.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Susan. And thank you, listeners, for joining us today. And we look forward to having you join us at our next one. Have a great day.